People like to think the courtroom is where truth wins. That's a lie. It's where the best liar with the sharpest suit wins, and unfortunately for me, that liar was standing across from me with the kind of smile that could cut glass. His name was Daniel Hart. Fresh-faced, brilliant, ruthless when he wanted to be. The kind of man who'd make a jury lean forward just to watch him speak, as though he was telling them the most intoxicating bedtime story instead of dismantling someone's entire life. And me? I was the one he was supposed to destroy. I didn't hate him. God, I wanted to. But the moment his eyes caught mine, I knew I was in trouble. Not because of the case, though that was a storm already tearing at my career, but because my chest burned with something I didn't want to name. It started on a Tuesday morning in Manhattan. September air still clung to the humid bite of summer, and the courthouse steps smelled faintly of roasted peanuts from a cart outside. I adjusted my tie like a man heading to his own funeral. My firm had warned me, "Don't lose this one, Carter. This case will define your name." I was Carter Hale, defense attorney. 32, sharp when I needed to be, blunt when I was exhausted, and currently carrying the kind of case that could end everything I'd built. My client was guilty, or at least guilty enough that no jury with half a brain would set him free. But it wasn't about justice. It was about survival for me, for my career, for the people who'd placed bets on my fall. And Daniel Hart? He was the golden boy the prosecution had unleashed to make sure I never crawled back. The first time he spoke in court, it wasn't his words that rattled might, was his voice. Calm, steady, the kind of cadence that slid under your skin and made you want to agree, even if it meant agreeing you deserved to burn. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. He simply believed every syllable he uttered, and the jury believed him too. I remember clutching my pen so hard it snapped in my hand. Ink bled across my palm, smearing over the legal pad in front of me. The judge raised a brow. Daniel almost smiled. I hated that smile. Hated it because it lit up something in me I had long buried under cynicism and late nights drowning in paperwork. That night, I found him alone in the hallway outside the courthouse, phone pressed to his ear, suit jacket draped over one arm. He looked less like an executioner then, more like some college kid pretending to be a man. The shadows from the tall glass windows cut across his face, softening the sharpness. He noticed me watching, ended his call, and slipped his phone into his pocket. "Rough day?" he asked. "Go to hell?" I muttered, but my voice lacked venom. He smirked, leaning against the marble wall. "Already live there. Want to join me for a drink?" I should have walked away. Instead, I found myself standing beside him 20 minutes later in a quiet bar, the smell of bourbon heavy in the air. "Why me?" I asked, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "Why not you?" His eyes lingered on me longer than was polite, his lips quirking like he knew a secret I'd die to uncover. "We're supposed to hate each other," I said. "Supposed to?" he echoed softly, like the idea amused him. "But I don't." My heart stuttered. The bar's dim lights reflected in his eyes, and I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The problem with Daniel was that he wasn't just good at law. He was good at people. He read them, dissected them, and rebuilt them in his mind until they were exactly where he wanted them. With me, though, it felt different. Like he wasn't trying to manipulate me, just see me. And no one had really seen me in years. I carried my loneliness like a secret briefcase, tightly locked, never shared. The late nights, the empty apartment, the ache of pretending that success filled the hole inside. Daniel touched that ache without even trying. The danger wasn't the case. It was him. The weeks stretched into a blur of court sessions, cross-examinations, late-night preparations, and stolen moments. A brush of his hand as we exchanged evidence. A glance that lasted too long during a recess. A conversation whispered in a stairwell, both of us pretending we didn't want what we couldn't have. Once, after a brutal day where I'd ripped apart one of his witnesses, I found him waiting outside in the rain. His hair plastered to his forehead, suit clinging to him. He grinned like the storm meant nothing. "You fight dirty," he said. "You fight prettier," I replied, surprising myself. We laughed, the sound swallowed by the rain. And then he stepped closer. Too close. close enough that I could smell the clean, sharp scent of his cologne mixed with the damp air. I didn't kiss him. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I walked away instead, heart hammering like it might break free. It wasn't just attraction. It was survival, yes, but also betrayal. If anyone discovered what was unfolding between us, I'd lose more than a case. I'd lose everything. In the world we lived in, two men circling each other in the shadows of justice wasn't just scandalous, it was unforgivable. And yet, every time he smiled at me, the scales tipped a little further. Every time his hand brushed mine, the line blurred. Every time I told myself this was madness, my heart whispered it was the only sane thing I'd ever felt. I didn't know it then, but Daniel was fighting a war of his own. Bound by expectations, by a family who wanted him to rise, by a system that rewarded cruelty more than compassion. Somewhere in the middle of our battle, he started breaking his own rules. He slipped me hints, tiny cracks in the armor of the prosecution. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then came the night he slid into the booth beside me at that same bar and whispered, "I can't keep doing this. Not against you." I stared at him, thunderstruck. "You're saying you'd throw your career away?" "I'm saying," he breathed, leaning closer, his shoulder warm against mine, "that some things are worth more than winning." And for the first time in years, I let myself believe in something other than survival. I believed in him. That was the beginning of the end, or maybe the beginning of everything. Because once you taste something forbidden and real, there's no going back. The truth is, once you let someone inside, no matter how small the crack, they find ways to widen it. Daniel slipped into my life like water through stone, slowly, insistently, until I realized I wasn't resisting anymore. Our encounters grew more reckless. A shared cigarette in the courthouse parking lot, leaning against opposite sides of his car. A late-night phone call that started about evidence and ended with both of us silent, breathing into the receiver, unwilling to hang up. But the closer he came, the more dangerous it felt. I had built my career on control, on knowing exactly which move to make 3 steps ahead. With Daniel, I was fumbling blind, led by a heart I had buried long ago. And hearts I knew were liabilities. The case itself was a monster. My client, a wealthy developer named Randall Pierce, was accused of bribing city officials to approve unsafe construction projects. Lives had been ruined, families displaced. The evidence against him was damning: paper trails, recorded calls, even a whistleblower who'd risked everything to testify. Daniel wielded it all with surgical precision. He was magnificent in court, so composed, so devastatingly effective that I should have hated him with every fiber of my being. Instead, I found myself watching him not as an opponent, but as a man I couldn't stop wanting. One afternoon, after he finished dismantling my cross-examination with a few pointed questions, he glanced at me. Just a flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible look. But in that second, I saw a war inside him. He wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to hold himself together. The night that changed everything happened on a Friday. I was in my office, drowning in files, when he showed up unannounced. No tie, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair messy from the wind. He looked nothing like the untouchable prosecutor I knew. He looked like a man on the verge of breaking. "We can't keep doing this," he said the moment the door shut. I set my pen down slowly. "Doing what?" "This." He gestured between us, his voice rough. "Whatever the hell this is. Carter, I'm supposed to bury you. I wake up every morning telling myself that. And then I see you and he broke off, fists clenching. "I don't want to fight you anymore." Silence stretched. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "You think I want this?" I said, finally standing. "You think I asked for this?" "No," he whispered. "But we're in it, aren't we?" And then he was kissing me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, raw, like every word we hadn't said had built up and finally exploded. His hands fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer, and I grabbed his face like I was drowning and he was air. For years I had buried myself in ambition, convinced that love was a luxury I couldn't afford. In that moment, with Daniel's lips on mine, I realized how starved I was. When we pulled apart, breathing ragged, he rested his forehead against mine. "This will ruin us," I murmured. "Maybe," he said, "but I'd rather be ruined with you than safe without you." We didn't sleep together that night. It wasn't about restraint, it was about fear. If we crossed that line, there would be no undoing it. Instead, he stayed in my office until dawn, sitting on the couch while I worked, occasionally reaching out to brush his fingers against mine. Those small touches said more than anything else could. When the morning light spilled across the room, he left without a word. But I knew then we were too far gone. The next week, the case turned brutal. Daniel brought in the whistleblower, a woman named Maria Sanchez who had once worked in Pierce's office. She was young, terrified, but determined. Under Daniel's questioning, she painted a damning picture of corruption. It should have been the nail in the coffin. Instead, something unexpected happened. She faltered. Not because she was lying, she wasn't, but because she was scared. Pierce's people had been threatening her. She admitted it in a shaky whisper under cross-examination, and suddenly the jury's eyes shifted. Not toward Pierce, but toward Daniel. They looked at him like he was complicit, like he had dragged a frightened woman into the fire without shielding her. And in that moment, I saw Daniel's mask slip. After court adjourned, I found him outside, pacing like a caged animal. "You pushed her too hard," I said carefully. "I know." His voice cracked. "God, Carter, I know." "Then why did you do it?" "Because I'm supposed to win. That's what they want from me. That's all they ever want from me." He dragged a hand through his hair, looking more like a lost boy than the star prosecutor. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him he wasn't alone. But the courthouse steps were crawling with people, and we both knew one wrong move would destroy us. So instead, I said quietly, "You don't have to be what they want." His eyes met mine, searching, aching. And for a fleeting second, I thought he might believe me. But belief isn't enough to save anyone. 2 days later, the firm I worked for cornered me. Senior partners, polished and merciless, pulling me into a conference room like executioners. "You're losing your edge, Hale," one of them said. "We can see it. You're distracted. If you want a future here, you'll get your head straight and crush heart in that courtroom. Do you understand?" I nodded, though bile burned my throat. What they didn't know was that I had already chosen the wrong side. That night, Daniel came to me again. We didn't talk about the case. We didn't talk about fear or consequences. We just existed in the same space, our bodies pressed together in the quiet of my apartment, his breath warm against my neck. "Tell me I'm not crazy," he whispered into the darkness. "You're not crazy. Tell me this isn't suicide." I hesitated, then said, "Even if it is, at least we're jumping together." His laugh was soft, broken, and then he kissed me again. This time we didn't stop. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the heat of his skin, the tremor of his hands, the way he looked at me like I was something worth choosing over everything else. It wasn't just passion, it was surrender. Two men who had spent their lives fighting finally laying down their weapons, if only for one night. When it was over, we lay tangled in sheets, hearts still racing. "Carter," he said softly, almost like a prayer, "I don't want to fight you anymore." "Then don't. I don't know how to stop." "Then we'll learn together." But the universe doesn't forgive easily. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message that turned my blood to ice. "We know about you and Hart." No name, no signature, just those words. And suddenly, everything we had risked, everything we had hidden, was teetering on the edge of exposure. I didn't tell Daniel right away. I should have. But fear made me reckless. If I admitted it, it would make it real. So I buried it, hoping it was just some cruel bluff. But secrets have a way of poisoning everything. In court, I stumbled. My questions lacked bite. My arguments rang hollow. And Daniel watched me with growing suspicion, like he knew I was keeping something from him. After one session, he cornered me in the stairwell. "What's going on?" he demanded. "Nothing," I lied. "Don't do that. Don't shut me out." His voice cracked. "Not now. Not when," but I couldn't. I couldn't put that weight on him, Not when his whole world was already crumbling under the pressure of this trial. So I lied again. And in that lie, I saw something in his eyes flicker. Trust, breaking. And that was the real beginning of the end. Because in love, as in law, once doubt takes root, it spreads like wildfire. The message haunted me. Every glance over my shoulder felt like a shadow waiting to pounce. Every whisper in the courthouse hall a threat wrapped in casual conversation. I kept replaying the words, "We know about you and heart." If it was true, if someone really knew, then everything we'd built in secret was on borrowed time. But if it was a bluff, then confessing would be like setting fire to our own lives. So I stayed silent. And my silence began to eat away at the fragile bond Daniel and I had forged. One evening, after another grueling day in court, I found him waiting outside my apartment. His tie was loose, his eyes dark with exhaustion and something sharper suspicion. "You've been different," he said as soon as I opened the door. "Different how?" I asked, forcing calm. "Distant, distracted, like you're here but you're not." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Carter, if I'm going to risk everything for you, I need to know you're not hiding from me." The words cut deeper than any cross-examination. Because he was right, I was hiding. "I'm not." I lied again, hating the way his face shifted, the disappointment flickering like a shadow. For the first time since we had crossed the line, he didn't kiss me when he left. The trial only grew uglier. The prosecution produced emails linking Pierce directly to city officials, and the jury's faces hardened. My defense was unraveling faster than I could patch it. And still, the anonymous messages came. Sometimes it was just a single sentence. "We're watching you." Sometimes a photo blurry, distant, but unmistakable. Daniel and me, sitting too close in the bar, his hand brushing mine. Every message felt like a noose tightening. Then came the ultimatum: lose the case, or everyone learns the truth. I stared at the words on my phone until they blurred. It wasn't just my career on the line, Anna Maria, it was his. His family, his reputation, his future. If our secret came out, he'd be painted as compromised, unethical, maybe even disbarred. I couldn't let that happen. So I made a choice. I would throw the case. I started subtly. I softened my arguments. I let objections slide. I misfiled evidence that should have undercut the prosecution. My firm didn't notice at first. They were too busy sharpening their knives, waiting for me to fall. But Daniel noticed. Of course he noticed. After one particularly weak cross-examination, he cornered me in the empty corridor outside the courtroom. His eyes burned into me, furious and wounded all at once. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. "Doing my job," I said flatly. "Bullshit. You're tanking, Carter. You think I can't see it." I swallowed hard. "Maybe you're just that good. Don't play games with me." He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. "Tell me what's going on. Right now." I should have told him. I should have laid the truth bare and let him choose with me. But fear clamped down on my throat. Instead, I said, "Maybe I finally realized Pierce deserves to burn." His grip loosened. For a moment, I thought I saw hurt flash across his face, hurt sharper than anger. Then he let go, stepping back like I'd struck him. "If that's how it is," he said quietly, "then maybe I don't know you at all." That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling until dawn. For years, I had believed loneliness was safer than vulnerability, that keeping my heart locked away was the only way to survive. And now, when I'd finally let someone in, I was destroying it with my own hands. But the threat was real. The messages kept coming, each more pointed than the last. The faceless enemy who knew our secret wasn't backing down. And if it came down to losing Daniel or losing myself, I knew which choice I'd make. I just didn't know if he'd forgive me for it. The trial reached its breaking point on a Monday morning. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. The press had swarmed the building, hungry for the verdict they were sure was coming. Daniel delivered his closing argument with the precision of a scalpel. He painted Pierce as a predator, a man who put greed over human lives, and his voice carried a weight that silenced even the cynical reporters in the back row. When it was my turn, I stood before the jury and tried to summon the fire I was known for. But my words felt hollow, my conviction cracked. I saw Daniel watching me, his eyes narrowing, and I knew he could see right through me. And maybe, just maybe, part of me wanted him to. That night, I finally broke. I found him in his office, papers scattered across his desk, tie abandoned on the chair. He looked up, startled, as I closed the door behind me. "We're being blackmailed," I said without preamble. His eyes widened. "What?" "Someone knows. About us. They've been sending me messages, threats. They said if I don't throw the case, they'll expose everything." The silence that followed was deafening. "How long?" he asked finally, his voice low and dangerous. "Since the second week of trial." "And you didn't tell me?" "I wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" He shot to his feet, fury blazing. "By sabotaging the case? By lying to my face?" I didn't know what else to do. My voice cracked. "Daniel, if they expose us, you'll lose everything. Your career, your family." His expression twisted, equal parts anguish and rage. "And you thought I'd rather win than know the truth?" I had no answer. He stared at me for a long, agonizing moment, then shook his head. "God, Carter, you're supposed to be the one person I can trust." And with that, he walked out, leaving me standing in the ruins of everything we'd built. The next days were hell. The jury deliberated while the city buzzed with speculation. My firm treated me like a dead man walking, and Daniel didn't speak to me at all. Every time I saw him across the courtroom, it felt like a knife twisting deeper. He had always looked at me like I was someone worth seeing. Now he looked at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. On the third day, the jury returned. "Guilty," the foreperson declared. The word rang through the courtroom like a gunshot. Pierce slumped in his chair, his empire crumbling around him. My firm's faces turned to stone. And Daniel? He didn't look at me. Not once. Outside, the reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones shoved into faces. Daniel gave a brief statement about justice, about accountability. His voice was steady, his expression unreadable. I slipped away in the chaos, unnoticed, unwanted, a ghost in a suit. Back in my apartment, the silence was suffocating. The messages had stopped. Whoever had been pulling the strings had gotten what they wanted. But at what cost? I had protected Daniel's career, his reputation. But in doing so, I had lost him. And the bitter truth was, I didn't know if I'd ever get him back. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. The world kept moving, uncaring, while my chest ached with a hollow kind of grief. I thought of his laugh, his touch, the way he'd whispered my name like it meant something. And I wondered if I'd ever hear it again. But sometimes the universe gives you one last chance. At 2 a.m, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, rain dripping from his hair, eyes blazing with something fierce and unyielding. Before I could speak, he pushed inside, shutting the door behind him. "You think you get to decide for both of us?" he demanded, water pooling on the floor from his soaked coat. I blinked, startled. "Daniel, no." He stepped closer, chest heaving. "You don't get to throw yourself on the grenade and leave me out of it. You don't get to decide that my career is worth more than us." My throat tightened. "I didn't want you to hate me." "Too late," he said, voice rough. Then softer. "I hated you for not trusting me. Not for loving me." The words hit me like a lifeline thrown into dark water. "Daniel." He closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbing my face in his hands and kissing me with all the fury and desperation of a man who'd nearly lost everything. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we weren't broken beyond repair. But outside, in the shadows of the city, I knew the battle wasn't over, because someone out there still knew our secret. And secrets have a way of demanding their price. And if we were going to survive this together, we'd have to fight harder than ever before. The kiss that night should have healed everything. But love is never that simple. We woke the next morning with the weight of reality pressing down like a gavel. Outside my apartment, the city buzzed with headlines of Pierce's conviction, the legal world dissecting every detail of the trial. For most, the story was over. For us, it was just beginning, because the blackmail still lingered, and whoever had been pulling those strings wasn't finished. The first sign came in the form of an envelope slipped under Daniel's office door. Inside, photographs. Us together, walking too close down a dark street. Sitting in that bar, his hand brushing mine. The one kiss we hadn't been careful enough to hide. Grainy but undeniable. No note this time. No demand. Just evidence waiting. Daniel brought it to me that night, his hands shaking as he spread the photos across my kitchen table. "They want us scared," he said, his voice tight. "They've already succeeded. Then we don't play defense anymore." His eyes burned with resolve I hadn't seen since the trial began. "We find them. We expose them before they expose us." Felt impossible, like chasing shadows. But Daniel was relentless. He traced the threats back through burner accounts, pressured contacts, followed whispers in courthouse hallways. And slowly a picture began to form. The blackmail wasn't random. It wasn't some opportunistic vulture circling our secret. It was coming from my own firm. One of the senior partners, a man named Victor Crowley, had orchestrated it all. He'd seen the way Daniel and I looked at each other. He'd smelled blood in the water and used it to control me, to guarantee Pierce's downfall and secure his own political ambitions. And when I realized it, my stomach turned to ice. "He wanted me to lose," I whispered. "Not just for Pierce. For me. For my career." Daniel's jaw tightened, and he would have destroyed both of us to do it. Confronting Crowley was like stepping into the lion's den. We met him in his office, the city skyline burning red behind him at sunset. He didn't bother denying it. "You were sloppy, Hale," he said coolly, pouring himself a glass of scotch. "I saw it the moment you let Hart linger too close. All I did was take advantage of your weakness." Daniel bristled, fists clenched at his sides. "You tried to ruin us." Crowley's smirk was razor-sharp. "I succeeded. Hale's reputation is finished. And you, Hart? You'd better pray no one sees those photographs." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then Daniel stepped forward. "Release them," he said. Crowley blinked. "What?" "Release the photographs. Leak them. Tell the world." Daniel's voice didn't waver. "Because I'm done being afraid of who I am." My breath caught. "Daniel," he turned to me, eyes softening. "They'll crucify us if we keep running. But if we stand together, they can't take that away." Crowley laughed, shaking his head. "You think the world is ready for its golden boy prosecutor holding hands with the enemy?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I don't care if it's ready. I am." And just like that, the decision was made. The next day, we went public, not on Crowley's terms, but ours. A quiet interview with a trusted journalist. A photograph we chose, not one stolen from shadows. The story broke like a thunderclap, shaking the courthouse and spilling across every news channel in New York. Prosecutor and defense attorney. Rivals in court, lovers in life. The backlash was immediate. My firm dropped me within hours. Old colleagues refused my calls. My phone lit up with anonymous insults, threats, even death wishes. Daniel faced his own firestorm. Some called him compromised, unethical, a disgrace to the badge he carried. But others' unexpected voices rose to defend him. Colleagues who admired his honesty. Young lawyers who whispered that he was braver than they could ever be. And through it all, we stood side by side. The storm nearly broke us, but it also freed us. For the first time, there were no secrets, no shadows, just us, raw and unvarnished, daring the world to look and keep looking. It wasn't easy. I picked up small cases, scraping together a living while rebuilding a reputation shattered by scandal. Daniel endured hearings, reviews, endless questions about his judgment. But he never faltered. Every time the pressure mounted, he'd take my hand, ground me with a look, and remind me why we had chosen this path. Because love, once named aloud, refuses to be silenced. Months later, Crowley was indicted on unrelated corruption charges. Watching him led away in handcuffs felt like poetic justice, A reminder that power built on cruelty always crumbles eventually. The city moved on. Headlines faded. New scandals replaced ours in the public eye. And slowly our lives began to feel like our own again. One evening in late spring, we walked together through Central Park. The air smelled of fresh rain, the trees heavy with blossoms. For once, no one stared, no one whispered. We were just two men walking side by side. Daniel slipped his hand into mine, squeezing lightly. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "What? Us?" "No. Choosing this. Choosing to be seen." I thought of the sleepless nights, the fear, the pain of watching everything I'd built collapse. And then I thought of him, his laugh, his fire, the way he looked at me like I was worth something even when I felt like nothing. "Not once," I said. He smiled, that smile that had once unnerved me in court, but now felt like home. "Good," he murmured, "because I'm not going anywhere." We stopped by the lake, the city skyline glittering in the distance. He turned to me, eyes brighter than the lights. "You once told me this would ruin us," he said softly. "But it didn't. It saved us." And he was right, because in the end, it wasn't the courtroom that defined us. It wasn't the case or the headlines or the judgment of strangers. It was the choice we made to stand together no matter the cost. That night, as we lay in bed with the window open to the city's hum, I realized something I had never dared to before. For years, I had believed love was weakness, that vulnerability was a trap. But Daniel had shown me the truth. Love wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing I had ever done. And as he drifted to sleep beside me, his hand still clasped in mine, I knew I would spend the rest of my life proving it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.